Okay, we have the Town Hall Building Committee meeting, full meeting, September 28, 2022. And it's just after 7 o'clock in the evening. We'll do a roll call. Say your first name, please respond as here and your full name. Mark?
Mark Cameron here.
Wayne?
Wayne Sawchuk here.
Kurt?
Garrett Lubitz here.
Josiah?
Josiah Stevenson, I think I'm here, but it keeps on cutting me out.
Okay. Thank you, Tucker.
Tucker Meehan here. I too am having a few issues tonight, but I am here.
Okay, great. All right, thank you all for coming. We do have a quorum. So this is just a sort of a fairly quick meeting. This is more of an update than anything else to see where we're at this time. I guess we could have an update on the plans, where we are with the plans, John.
Sure. So
Good place to start.
yeah, no. So I had a brief discussion with Mark, and I reached out to Phil, and Phil had given us an update set about a month ago. It's about a 90% set. Phil needs about 3 or 4 more weeks to be 100% complete. So, and my thought would be, there's no real benefit for you guys that want to take a look at these things to go through them only to then get the final in 3 or 4 weeks. So I would say, given the fact that the select board hasn't given us any direction as far as when this project would go to a town meeting, I would say let Phil finish. And then he knows that, there's going to be a round of comments, both from you guys and from us. So let's at this point, just, I would say, let him finish. And the reality is, the majority of, I think, of the work remaining is with the sub-consultants. It's not so much with, his work is, he has control of his work. He doesn't have control of his subs per se, only by contract does he have control of them. So he said 3 or 4 weeks, to get them done. So I think, we give him that time and finish. And I know, and he had been a little bit, do I hold off a little bit? Do I go? And maybe there was some confusion there, not knowing where the CM was going to be with this. And as you all know, we stopped the CM process after the qualifications piece because we couldn't give them a concrete schedule as far as what Part B would be, as far as what the plan for procurement would be, when the town meeting would be. And you kind of need those things to be able to pull a trigger with a CM. So, so I think that let Phil finish, tell him, we're going to tell him officially to finish, I think would be the recommendation. And then if that, depending on where this goes, when this goes, I should say, we can, I guess the only downside to any of that, telling him to finish, is that if there is feedback, and there's any significant design change that comes out of this, redesign this, redesign that, it would be an ad service to him, because we're essentially would be telling him, finish your contract, send us a bill, be done. Again, that doesn't include comments from us or from you, those kind of constructability comments. But if there is any additional scope added or changed, we might be looking at, additional services depending on what that change is. Something small, no. But if it's change the heating system to blank, change all the details on certain finishes to Y, those are the kind of things that coming out of like a VE process that would impact, would be a kind of a redo for him. So questions on that?
We met a couple of weeks ago with Mark and Phil and stuff, and we ended up wanting to have the architect create for us some different, sort of a different design on the exterior of the building, so the site work part of it. And I think it's partly because when I looked at it, I said, how are they going to match the sidewalk on the left-hand side of the old town hall to the existing sidewalk that are there? It doesn't match up. The grades don't work. Or there's something here that says has the contractor dig out the conduits, and then it has the contractor putting wires in the existing conduits. It has granite curbing where I would like to have slope curbing. It has, you know, we some of us still believe that the handicap spaces in the back of the building are really not good, and that the handicap spaces should be in the front of the building and serve both buildings, the old town hall.
So Wayne, just, so when we met, we went through like, I think we got through 3 or 4 pages of drawings before we kind of called it for the night that evening. So I think we have all those comments. And I think it's us finishing with this remaining 90% set and getting them all to JRA so they can take a look at that. Otherwise we would break it in and break it up into pieces and give it to them. If there's some site, if your stuff is more geared towards the site and you want to just put those as a separate item, we can look at that too with them. But
those are comments that should be given to them soon, I think.
Well,
We should-
in fairness, guys, if you at this point are to me, that's I would have to look at your comments to understand. You know, if you're redoing the outside of the site because you think that the handicap parking spaces shouldn't go where they are, and now we're talking about, changing curbing to one type to another, that's no big deal. That's easy. But if you're actually talking about layout changes, we got to make sure, it might not just be a few sheets. You got to go through and make sure there's no changes to site, other site issues, site utilities, those kind of things. Was it due to drainage or any of that sort of stuff? So I would say if there's concern about that or a real thought of the committee to do that, then to Josiah's point, yeah, let's tell them that now. But I guess my question would be, are you asking them to redo it, or are you asking them for a couple of ideas on an option? Like, show me an option. Like, don't design it, stick with what we have right now, or you're telling them to redo what you have. Those are two different things. And in my mind, those are two completely different asks.
I think the word options certainly takes care of a good part of it. Okay. So you have this, can we do this as a different option? It will be less, it will much more appealing.
What has to be involved, who doesn't?
Steve, you're not on mute. I'm sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
But other things that I think are just, in my opinion, I think they're mistakes. In other words,
no. So your comment about the conduits, like, that's the kind of inconsistency that we want to shake out for sure.
Yeah. So in other words, it's not. So some of it is, why did you do this? Right. I mean, that, because we don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean,
listen. Mistakes or inconsistencies.
And can you, in fact, consider this?
Yeah. So
correct,
to me, this is too.
But Wayne, we only went through the stuff on the outside of the building. We didn't even get inside the building on the drawings. So if we're going to do that, we should do that. I mean, that was literally as far as we got, was the site conversation.
Yeah. And Mark, refresh my memory. Did we go to the planning board with this already?
No.
So we don't have to. We
no.
don't have to do that with because it's a town project.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But when Phil, Wayne, and I got together, which is probably months ago at
Are
this
you
point,
sure about?
Yeah, Steve, you're
On the planning board, are you sure you don't have to go to the planning board? Every other project we're doing, you got to go to the planning board.
Well, we're not going to go to the planning board, because what do they have for a say in it? Nothing.
yeah, Steve, we didn't do that here. So,
Hey,
I guess what I would,
the parking.
Steve, your connection's horrible. Getting every fifth word. So guys, what I would suggest, and I think what we're getting here is kind of two columns of items. Number one is the usual, and you know, I'm going to characterize it as there's always that stuff. There's always those inconsistencies, those disconnects. Those, yes, we want to shake through that. We haven't taken a look at this yet because of this kind of start-stop nature of it. We're going to spend your money, we want to spend it one time, and we'll have our guys go through it too. So there's that list of stuff. But the other thing, the options, you know, to me, if there's a, you know, and you hit the word on the head, I think, is cheaper. You know, if there's a more cost-effective way to do something and you want some thought on that, that's kind of the piece that we don't have the opportunity with the CM, but clearly, yes, if you have an idea that we want them to kind of take a look at and put a few pen strokes to, yes, I think that is something we should let them know. And if there's more than one of those things that comes up, have that discussion while we have this time until we're given some more direction. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And I also know when I spoke to Phil, there was discussion about acoustics for the hall, you know, and the way in his mind that was left was, you know, am I getting a proposal to have an acoustic guy come in, do some sound readings and do that? Like, so there's going to be a short list of some other things. And, you know, if there's another site option you want to look at, let's put that on the list. You know, he wants some feedback on that acoustics. You know, are we going to include that? You know, do we want to do a little more work on that right now? Let's answer that question. So I think your approach, Wayne, is fine, but it's in my mind, two different things. It's the kind of the constructability, coordination of drawings discussion. You know, what did you miss? Kind of all those things. Why'd you do this? Here's what we found. Your list, our list, put them all together, say, fix all this. And then it's here's the other stuff that let's take a look at because we're interested. It might save us some money, or listen, we didn't have checking the acoustics in the original scope, but yeah, tell us how much that would cost. Maybe it makes sense to really do that now. And we could, have that kind of two paths of conversation going.
I'm sure at this point, he thinks that options are way past, this is CDs. This isn't schematic design.
Oh, I didn't say it was cheap, Josiah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're 100% correct. I mean, there were plans and everything that were put out there, looked at, renderings, layouts, and they have developed those. But
Yeah.
if there's, I mean, again, they're the town's designer, and if you tell them to go left, I mean, he can certainly give thoughts on what it would take to change a series of drawings if you change your mind on something right now. But I agree with you. You are at 95%, 95% right now. Some of them are further than others. And
Okay.
For instance, we're at 95%, but we have a set of plans that don't show anything in the auditorium is what's going to be happening. Nothing. We're blank. How do we have 95%?
So
What are we doing in the auditorium? What are we going to do there for lighting? What are we going to do there for the stage? What are we going to do there for that? It's blank. It has 6 light fixtures for the auditorium, the whole auditorium. Yet there are 100 light fixtures for the bathrooms and the entrance and everything. Why? What is holding that up?
well, I guess we'd have to go back to the understanding on what the discussion was of what was going to be redone. And that's.
Well, the other part too is, Wayne, I believe you're looking at a set that's probably 75% set. Because they haven't given us what they have right now.
They gave us the latest of what we got today, and it was the HVAC demolition and installation. We have not received anything on the auditorium, nothing. And by the way, Michelle, is that correct?
That's the last thing I received was the HVAC papers that I gave you today.
Hold on a second. Michelle, did you have a chance to look at the, it was like August 22nd.
Yeah, so Natalie dropped me something and all that was in there was the HVAC demo file.
No, okay, so I'm looking at,
Because the latest set I have here was the 75% set. That's
Okay.
the set that Phil, Wayne, and I were looking at.
What's
months
the
ago.
date on that?
Like, it's a November date.
Yeah. Of last year. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a long time ago.
yeah.
What have we
No,
got?
that's the last set I vaguely remember them saying they were gonna send us a recent set over in the last couple of weeks. And Michelle had asked who wanted copies of them printed out.
And so I printed it out, and what I printed was the HVAC stuff is all that I got out of that.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't think I
that's,
ever, I don't
so
think
that
I
was
ever
a-
picked those.
that was a zip file. And that zip file, I'm looking at 30 pages of architecturals right now that was in that folder. And that was just the architectural file. So
What do you, anything newer?
I mean, I'm zooming in here. I think, I mean, everything's got a date of August 22nd. I don't know if that means they've updated them completely. I mean, bottom line is, I hear your point. Let's get you guys, I guess back to my first point. Don't look at them anymore. If they're only 4 weeks from completion, let them finish. You know what I mean? I mean, if there's some concern about, you know, from that last look of what are we doing in the auditorium? If the answer is, you know, let them answer that question, you know, but I don't want you guys wasting your time looking at a set that's going to be replaced right when you probably finish looking at what we have right now. So again, absent direction from the, I mean, obviously we're not going to the fall town meeting. So our next thing is spring town meeting, right? We've got time to be able to let them finish and go through this. So I would say let them finish, and then let's, you know, let's get you guys the drawings 3 or 4 weeks from now, and then, you know, go through them at that point.
It's just a shame that it isn't, that when you, that you don't receive something that's blank, and then it's going to be like this is what you guys are going to do, and we don't have a chance to look at it and say, well, wait a minute, why can't we do this? Or can we have the people that are using the auditorium and stuff give us some input and stuff and do this?
Yeah,
and that?
but I guess my concern, Wayne, is we are way past the point of getting input from the users. I mean, we're at 90%. If there
But
was
hold on a second. We've also asked several times on the windows. We've never had a detailed
Okay.
conversation
No,
on the windows.
no, that's fair.
And-
But if there's, to me, that's, I guess the question is, well, let's do this. Rather than waiting for them to draw, let's schedule a meeting with, doesn't have to be the whole committee, few of you guys, let's grab Phil, let's get them and say, here's our concerns from that.
But they
first
have to
look.
be high level concerns. We're not going through.
Yeah, no,
details
100%. Just
But I
say,
just, it's gotta be, to be most constructive and efficient, it has to be high level and not the details of a railing in a sidewalk. It's gotta
100%.
be very high level. So that
100%. If there's, just to make sure, and I think the timing of this is actually good, because if he's telling me there's 4 weeks left, say, hey, listen, we've seen what you've given us. We're concerned about the level or lack of detail of scope in the auditorium. Our understanding was you were going to do X, Y, and Z. From what we see, you're only looking at 6 light fixtures. Where do we stand here? Is this just not done? Or is this, you know, I think that's what's needed here. Similarly, the windows, you know, Steve's on the call. Phil, what are we doing for the windows? At this point, we still don't have a good understanding of where and what's happening with the windows in the building. What's the, you know, what is that? And that way, let's give them that opportunity. So what I would say, Mark, if you want to,
and there's got to be other things that have to exist out there too, because there hasn't been a lot of, other than the layout and the space, there hasn't been a lot of conversation about any interior finishes, details, any questions that they have asked us. I would expect that they would have questions for us on what we're looking for. And I would think that window is a big part of it. I mean, it
No, I
also
guess,
involves, that's probably a meeting in itself with historical commission folks too, and getting them in the loop. I mean, Phil and Wayne went through this, I think, quite extensively next door at the church. And I think they probably have a lot of good knowledge and probably ahead of the curve.
So windows question, auditorium question, both scope. What's the, as far as windows, what's the scope? What's the, impacts and meetings with the historical commission? Auditorium, same question. What is the final scope for the auditorium? And versus, what the lack of info that was on the November drawing versus, where we're heading now. Interior finishes, feedback from the committee, question mark, where, types, that sort of thing. And then any other significant areas that were.
Well, I think what Wayne mentioned on the outside, I think the handicap and the parking and the sidewalk.
Well, yeah, no, so Phil, what I'd say is the concerns about the discontinuity of items, that's something that will shake out. You know what I mean? Clearly, yeah, but if there's one of those, I know we're going to find 4 or 5, 6 others, for sure. There's going to be other things that don't coordinate, between trades. The question is, if you want to mention the site of moving handicap spaces, that's to me, that's kind of a VE question. Could we do this? And what I would want is, Wayne, if you had a drawing and, could red marker it and just, hey, what if we moved this over here, kind of thing, to give them an idea.
There aren't handicap, and handicap spots are supposed to be the closest to the entry, the main entry.
Right. By the way, they would be if they're in the front of the building, because they would serve both the new town hall and the old town hall. And they would than being in the back of the building, farthest away, closest to the church, and going on to the of the current old town hall. There's no question about distance. And you don't know whether you have an event at the town hall or at the old town hall or the new town hall. And yet the same number of spaces would be placed inappropriately. So
Wayne, I have some recollection that there was an issue with that, though, wasn't it? That those spaces didn't count towards the spaces that were in the lot that were required.
But there's room.
Those could be public, but they might be available, but they wouldn't count towards the spaces that we needed to provide in the parking lot at any event.
So we created 4 common handicap and non-handicap spaces in the front of this last, when the project resurfaced the streets and put the curbing in. Okay, so those 4 spaces can absolutely be made all handicap. They're made for handicap or they're made for non-handicap, meaning, if you want handicap, you're going to put 2 signs up that say handicap. If you want 4 handicap, you're going to put 4 up. There's some question about whether you can use those for handicap if they're in fact they're dual purpose. Well, let's not make them dual purpose. Let's make them handicap, and let's get rid of the 3 that are in the back that frankly are just the cost of in the back with raising the foundation up, putting the ramps in, the concrete ramps, all this different stuff against the side of the building and all that. It just doesn't make sense. But anyway,
So John, this is enough of a concern that affects the layout outside, the entrance and walkways and so forth. That you tell me how we deal with it. How do we wait till we get 100% and then come back and have them do an option and pay them for it, or do we present it?
Well, I think Wayne's already voiced these concerns with them too. So either, again, John, I think it's a reminder to JRA that this isn't anything new that we haven't talked about before.
Right.
So I think that they need to put that response together so that they can understand that and what we've got to do for due diligence there. Either it's a dead issue because we can't do it for some code reason, and we should understand why, or we've got to continue with what we've got drawn.
Yep, no, that's
From
fine.
the beginning, there is something in his mind that says that they're only allowed to deal with from the back of the sidewalk back to the land in the back of the building, and not do anything on the sidewalk or on the roadway. because that's not part of the town hall project. That's town government. And he doesn't understand, we are town government. If you have 4 handicap spaces on the street, you absolutely can have those 4 spaces for the building. This is like madness to me. But anyway,
I know, but the madness is we don't have the rest of the building figured out and designed too. So we're essentially handicapped here because we have to advance so many other spots too. So
Okay, so listen, message received. I think the idea of having a working call with him would be a good thing. And if that's just with a small group of us, I think that's fine. Mark, I will put together kind of a summary email that I'll share with you. Tell me if I hit everything, and then
Okay.
we'll forward that to him tomorrow, and we'll suggest a time, be early next week to, get on a Zoom, kind of run through. He can kind of point to things on drawings and all of that. I think that's a fine idea. And then if there's, I will refresh, ask him to refresh our memory on why those handicap spaces were put where they were, and why, could they, or why weren't they put out on the street, accessible to both the old and new buildings.
right now,
Should this be in person? So we can look at drawings?
Let me ask him. Yeah, I don't see why not.
now this on the windows, what has happened in the last 12 months is that the gentleman that was on the committee to restore the windows on the town hall 10 or 15 years ago had done a report, and they spent $200,000 or $300,000, and they replaced some of the windows, and they came up with a model of what they were going to do. And that report, I think, can allow us to use windows that have already been restored, that people don't know necessarily that they were restored at quite an expense, and carry and then create more of those for the church side of the building, of the old town hall. And so it seems, I would hate to have someone come in, and I've had this happen in my life, and tear thing out and put something new in and find out that it was only a year old that you took it out.
Yeah, if you guys, listen, if you already did work.
But there's a report that should be given to him if he doesn't have it, that says, this is what was done, and this is what the second step is that we were planning, but we didn't take it before town meeting and get more money. And it was part of the,
Was what was done, Wayne, approved by the historic commission? Were they on board with what was done previously?
by a contractor that did that work. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good to know. Yeah,
And-
who would have that?
David Farag would have that.
David Frog, yeah.
John, I can get you that.
Yeah, that would be great, Michelle.
Sure.
Well,
So
to me,
when was the report done?
start of it, and what they did obviously was to restore the ones that were the worst, because they had a budget, and then left the others to like the one in Michelle's former office to be done later. So,
That's a nice way to say it. It'll be done later.
I do miss that window.
I bet you
So
do.
when was,
I think the
when
word
was,
is rot.
when was the work done?
excuse me,
When was the work actually done on those other windows?
somewhere in the last 10 to 12 years, something like that.
I think 2014 is the date.
Or 24, okay,
Does
earlier.
that sound about right, Wayne?
Yeah, probably. That's eight years ago. Right. Yeah.
And,
So,
and when was this study done?
well, it's the report that was done by the town. Their committee hired a restoration company, and they came in to basically do an analysis of this, and then made certain recommendations. And then with their budget, they were able to change. I'm just going to say, because I don't know what it was, but maybe 8 of 12, and they went ahead and did that. And in it was a timetable for when they should do the rest of them. And that was, and I think they, I think they used CPC money to do it too. I think it was funded by that. And
So wouldn't it be appropriate to take a look and see how those windows held up that were done,
correct,
however
absolutely.
many, right? To see if that was a worthwhile repair, because if it wasn't a worthwhile repair, there's no sense in repeating bad history here and doing it again. The other item is, in the time that has passed since, has the window further deteriorated to a point of a different level of repair and recommendation that even though the report was done X amount of years ago, the information in it isn't really particularly accurate anymore and necessarily 100% relevant.
Well, we're
to the
talking
best path forward.
8 years is what we're
No,
talking.
I know, but if it's been open and deteriorating and rotting, it'll continue to rot.
Right, but if we don't bring this up and we don't have someone go look,
No,
We-
you got it. No, it's no, point taken, point taken. Let's look at the work that was done and see, one, did it hold up? Two, if it held up, then we shouldn't include it in the scope of this job. And then three, can we do what was done to those, to the remaining? And so that we end up with the same product, same thing.
and it'll
So-
pass.
Yes, so I'm looking at the PowerPoint that David Farag put together for the window restoration program, and it's dated March 29, 2008. Well, I think it was done either that year or the next year.
What does it say, Phil?
Well, it just, I mean, it's a whole PowerPoint. There's this, they reviewed all the different windows, the different styles of windows inside and out. And I am assuming they made a recommendation. PowerPoint is just for presentation of
Correct.
what's on that committee.
If you
want to
if you can
say,
reach out to him and get us the info of kind of what happened when they were done with the first, when they were done with the project, the money they were able to spend. I think that's definitely that's the starting point for sure.
Right.
Okay.
so we've got this window sash repair, painting, window sash replacement, window sash replacement, window sash removal, installation, new weather stripping, removal of selected exterior storm windows, installation of interior aluminum storm windows, restoration of existing exterior wood shutters. So there's quite a scope there.
And that was probably, that presentation was made probably to raise funds to be able to do the project at some point in the future. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Thank you on that.
No problem.
John, I'm sending that to you now.
Okay, awesome. And I'll share that with Phil. So I will still, to kind of bookend this issue, I will send you, Mark, a write-up tomorrow of kind of the points here that we want to ask him about, that we want to meet about if we can in person. Again, we'll figure out a day and a time. We can do that via, a doodle poll or something. But I will send that to you before I send that to him. And then if you have that, you can send me that with the window piece. I'll forward that to him for sure.
Okay.
Now, on some items like the generator, we should have a vote of whether or not we're going to spend $750,000 for 800 kW generator or something, the pad and everything else on it, or are we just going to, in my recommendation, and by the way, you can have a separate generator, much smaller and everything like that for the emergency lights and all the rest of it, and have just a hitching station there, so that if we needed it and wanted to rent one, or we had one that served different buildings, that we could just plug it in when we needed it, and not have something that's going to sit there and just rest. So, I don't think
that question, it's a good question, Wayne. I mean, that's, to me, I would put that in the other column of the VE, the potential change column. Do you know what I mean? And that's a great item to, never mind the fact that if we had a 12-month duration on the project, you're not going to see it for probably 14 months if we ordered it right now.
right.
So that's the other reason, that another compelling reason to reconsider, reconsider it for the project. I guess the only question I have is, was this place ever going to be considered a place of refuge? No? Okay, then I would agree.
No, the senior center is that, but
Okay. Yep, so what I would say is let's put that, I'll put that on the list of with the kind of the options.
And there's been no reason to, this is not the Cohasset Emergency Management, so there's no need to have any certain disaster capabilities. It's a nice to have
Yep. Nope,
for town
okay,
staff
nope.
that,
Yep, we'll get that, we'll put that on the list, for sure. I mean, our own fire station in town rolls up a generator when the storms are coming, and they plug it in. So. Okay, Phil, I think that's that item.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Mark, is there anything else you want to go over?
no, I guess just, I mean, so obviously we slowed down here and we had some, you know, lack of direction, I guess, and lack of full support on the select board side. As to what direction we're going in. I've been just listening in as a resident to those long-range capital planning or long-range capital meetings. And so just trying to be a fly on the wall there, and they really trying to. Okay, do it there. And it's, you know, I guess the schools, was it the school survey was being done at I guess today, it said 9/28, and they won't hear back until you maybe at best late 22 or early 23 on the school subject. And they're just trying to figure out how to put this in the overall financial plan. So I suppose that it would be wise for us to maybe get in front of one of their meetings and just simply ask them that when and explain to them the timeline and how much time it's going to take for us to get a CM on board, get through that process, the difference between having a bid in hand or an estimate in hand. And, you know, because and John and I talked about this just in general sense, we need to know by the end of October if we're going to expect, with a decision here from the select board, if we're going to be able to basically come to town meeting in the spring, figuring it's sometime in May, and come with a bid in hand, or the next milestone is mid-January, and at that point we could get to spring town meeting with a estimate in hand. So there's a, you know, if we don't sort of release the CM group and continue down, then we're gonna have trouble meeting those deadlines.
Yeah.
Because there's many steps to the process. It's all about the number of steps and the duration of each of those. So it's not a quick process.
Just to refresh everybody's memory too, is, you know, the CM, you know, once we qualify, you know, basically the qualifications is, you know, roughly a 2-week process to 2 weeks of advertising, 2 weeks to review, 4 or 5 weeks to get to that first piece, and then say, okay, who's going to get the RFP? We did that first piece. We got 3 firms, 3 good firms, but we never pulled the trigger on the RFP. The problem now is that enough time has gone by that, you know, the 3 firms, we didn't invite them to the RFP. We would probably suggest re-advertising for the RFQ with the hopes to get more, because our window of opportunity, you know, we kind of blew through it. So plus and a minus. The minus is it took too long, but maybe the plus is we get a few more firms, you know, the next time. So it's probably a, you know, so 6 weeks for an RFP. It's a 10 to 12 week process. It's 3 months. So to Mark's point, we got to go if we're going to, you know, have a bid in hand. And even in January, it's, you know, it's probably early January, Mark, you know, to give them the month of April to kind of get an estimate together, you know, on these drawings. The good news is the drawings will be done, you know, give them that time. So.
So I think it's up, I think it's for us to put that, that urgency and that timeline in front of the select board.
Yep.
So that they can understand that if we get an answer in February or March, that's not gonna be doable. And then that's gonna just push the timeline further down the road and the price goes up and we have to redo the whole process again.
Yeah, I mean, we always, I guess the piece to not lose sight on is, doing the CM decision was, I think, the right decision, especially in this market. At any point, we can ask Phil's guy to redo his estimate, but that's only one data point. Do you know what I mean? We could get an estimator to do it too. Second data point, but again, it's another independent estimator. And those, I would much rather have a builder having the builder give you that second number. It just feels better in this world where we're living in right now.
I have one question for Michelle, and that was, I noticed that it looks like the elevator there has been fixed, or can you give us an upgrade on that? Just because
Sure.
that was giving a little momentum to do the town hall, because the elevator had stopped running, and apparently they were looking for 100,000 or so to build it. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So we did go to advisory and ask for $65,000 to decommission the elevator, just to find out if there was any environmental mitigation that we needed to do for spillage. They've been on site for the past 2 days, actually 3 days now. And today they discovered, which was the best case scenario for us, that there was a sleeve in the elevator shaft, as well as, I'm going to do a terrible job of explaining the mechanics of an elevator, but there is a pan that it looks like caught most of the spillage. Therefore, Clean Harbors will be in either tomorrow or Friday. And then at that point, we'll know exactly what we're up against for mitigation. And as far as fixing the elevator completely, that would cost another $35,000, $40,000. And I don't know that anyone is prepared at this time to approve the repair of the elevator. So
But
that,
you've moved people from upstairs to downstairs and things like that, so that apparently it would take care of elderly or handicapped people from having the need to go up to the upper levels.
yep. So what we do, especially during tax time, is we move the treasurer collector downstairs. She moves into the building department and is able to collect. We also have our greeters asking if anyone needs accommodations on the first floor. Therefore, someone from the second floor will come down and accommodate their needs. And that is how we're presently working. We don't have the space, as you know, to move our second floor offices on the first floor. It's just a major disruption to the building, and there's not adequate space for just to move those departments around.
So that's a potential selling point for the project. Something that the new project's going to cost us $100,000 a month rent, and to pay off the 20-year mortgage. And if it's going to cost $100,000 to do it, you should go ahead and do it, because we're going to be probably 18 months away from being able to have an elevator that does work or whatever.
So we did talk, so Wayne, we did talk on a select board meeting a few weeks back about temporary office space and developing an RFP to send out to see if there's any temporary space available in town that we can move into. A, that's ADA accessible, and B, knowing that this project is on the horizon. So that RFP is being developed. I don't know when it will be issued, but there was at least some direction to at least begin looking for temporary space.
Okay, that was a good update.
Do you have anything else? John, you good? Thank you for your explanation. Thank you.
I'm good, thank you. And Mark, if you need anything, I mean, we certainly have the old presentation for the select board. Frankly, I think you know, maybe we should do something a little more detailed just to back it up,
Yeah.
you know,
um,
just to, because,
If you can, I mean, if you, and again, it's arbitrary of the months and the start time, really. It just shows them what that,
yeah, I would rather say, I would rather take the two kind of timelines we talked about and
Yeah.
back up and just say, I know that, you know, 6 weeks for RFP, I know 4 to 5 weeks for RFQ, you know, a week in between. I mean, that puts a burden on you guys, you know, to have, we can get it done. You guys have, you know, you guys have other jobs, you know, the committee involvement to kind of turn those things around fast. Kind of back up and show those periods. And then the other thing that's not built in there, the RFP period, but also the bidding period. You know, basically with a CM or design bid build, all of the subcontractors have to be pre-qualified. There's the buyouts phase, like there's months of other work, and then the bid timing as well. So it's, if we were to say go, you know, by the end of October, we are you know, it's constant work between now and the next town meeting, you know, just to kind of check all those boxes and get all those players in line. So I think it'd be a good idea to kind of, even if I won't do it on a project schedule person, I'll do it more on a bar chart, just so it's easier to understand. But I think it's a worthy exercise just to kind of illustrate, here's how the sausage is made a little bit behind to get you that number, that actual bid number for that Springtown meeting. Do we have any idea of when exactly that, you know, I had it May, June kind of thing? Do we have any better idea as to what that date will be?
It looks like it's gonna be closer to the second week in May, if not the last week in April. Those are the dates I keep hearing.
And what day of the week is that usually, Michelle?
I think it's typically a Monday, right?
Saturday or Monday.
Okay, I'll put those Mondays in. I'll see, Mark, I'll work that, because that may change our drop dead dates a little bit, may make them actually a little bit sooner. But that's why I'd rather lay in some logic and see how that plays out. You're on mute.
yep,
Okay.
that makes sense. And I guess, you know, with the first one, I mean, the time around Christmas is usually tends to be a lost time.
Oh, it's
If
the
we're
worst
giving
time.
them, if we're giving them dates and we're not giving them an overall, you know, it's gonna basically be 12 weeks or 12 to 16 weeks or whatever it is, regardless of when we start.
Yeah, and I would gray out the holiday period too, just because I
Yeah.
would not recommend to you to bid anything too close. Just, you get garbage bids. Because
And then it also
people
puts them
find
in-
on other things.
It also just puts, you know, I guess it's a piece of information if this ever needed to be its own special town meeting. I mean, it's a big enough topic in the town, you know, and there is a seasonal driver to this of when it optimally makes. I mean, are we going to wait to do it in a inopportune season just because of a timing of when we have scheduled town meetings? I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but
Yeah.
at least we can communicate the information. Others can make that decision.
I'll put some thought into it, and I'll share that with you.
Okay, great, thanks. Steve, I don't know if we have a connection still, but is there anything else you wanted to add?
I'm all set. So thank you.
I think there was a thank you. We kind of,
That's the only word we heard.
all right, Steve.
I think
we got a thank you.
Steve's all set, he said.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Oh,
Awesome,
there we go.
perfect. Michelle, is there anything else we need to cover? All right, great, thanks for setting this up. Just need a motion to adjourn and a second if we're all set.
Second,
Motion to adjourn.
Great. We will be in touch for our next meeting. Thank you very much for your time. Be
Okay,
well.
guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.